Good to see you, Minister.
Good to see you, Rosie. You were up late last night
not
too.
Not as late as you. Not as late as you. Thankfully. When did you realize you were going to get a deal over the past 72 hours, not the past 14 months?
Okay, so yes, I was going to say, and this is really, really true. I always was confident we would get a deal. In the end, I always knew there was going to be a lot of drama, but the reality is this is an economic relationship that works and that is balanced and mutually beneficial. And I really believe economic logic ultimately does prevail. But in a trade deal, you talk about trade negotiators, the professional guys. Mm-hmm. They talk about a landing zone. And I think that there were two key moments when the landing zone became apparent to me. The Americans had started off demanding 50% US domestic content in cars and car parts. That would have been devastating for Canada. In March, and I want to give Ambassador Lighthizer a lot of credit for this, the USTR, we came up with this idea of labor value content. So instead of it being US, it would be high wage labor, right, which of course includes Canada. And suddenly the US and the Canadian interests were aligned, and this was a deal that Canada could do in cars and car parts, which was always the most complicated and most important part of the deal. So that for me was moment one. Yep. Moment two was end of August, when we first went back to Washington. And when it was clear that the car deal had been concluded by the Mexicans, and also that the Americans really wanted us to be part of it, which also makes sense. This has always been a three-way agreement. The Canadian economic relationship is by far the most valuable one for the Americans. So it became clear to me in that first week that Ambassador Lighthizer had real goodwill when it came to getting a deal. And I knew at that point we would get a deal. And I think it's fair for me now to reveal I always thought it would happen on Sunday night.
Why did you think that? Because that was part of the negotiating strategy, or not on our behalf,
but
on theirs?
Or you know, we would have loved to have done it a lot. It couldn't realistically, it wasn't possible just because of the time it takes until the spring. But we would have loved to have done it in the spring or any time subsequently. I was always convinced it wasn't going to happen until the 11th hour because Ambassador Lighthizer and his team are really good negotiators, and so are we. And so everyone just had to keep pushing until the end.
Okay, so I know that Chapter 19 was sort of nailed down and you were quite pleased with that over the weekend. Explain to Canadians why that it was so critical, why it was really a breaking point. It had to be there.
You know, what Chapter 19 does is it gives us laws and rules that govern our trading relationship with the United States and an independent binational panel that decides who's right and who's wrong. And you know, we Canadians understand how close our ties with the United States are, how critical they are, but also that they are big and we are small. And so the way to make that work is to have a set of rules and to have an independent place you can go to figure out who's in the right and who isn't. Chapter 19 is that.
Fine, but...
Fine, excellent. This matters a lot in southwestern Ontario.
But would you not say that we now, NAFTA 2.0 is actually more managed trade rather than freer trade?
Not at all. Where is the managed element?
Dairy. Pharma,
dairy has
chickens, all those things. This is not. No, you could not tell me that this is a freer trade deal than what you had before.
I actually, Rosie, would completely disagree with the premise of that question. I am not in favor of bringing in managed trade elements to a trade agreement. And we haven't done that here. When it comes to supply management, that has always been managed trade because of the nature of the Canadian supply management system. On cars, the trade is exactly as it has been before, but with new rules of origin.
And quotas if the 232 gets applied.
Well, but the quotas are not part of the agreement. This is actually, I'm glad you asked the question because this is a misapprehension that I have heard from other people, and it's just wrong. There are, and I want to be very, very clear, there are no quotas in NAFTA on car sales between the US and Canada. There are no quotas on car parts. When it comes to the side letter on 232 on cars and car parts, I think the way to think about that is it's like a flood insurance policy.
Okay.
A flood is probably not going to happen, but a prudent person, if they have an opportunity to get an insurance policy, will certainly get one. So what that side letter does is it gives us some comfort that in the, I believe, frankly, very unlikely event that the US were to impose 232 tariffs on cars and car parts, we would have a huge part, actually well over our current level of trade with the US, would be guaranteed not to be exposed to those.
Okay.
But this is a kind of, in an unlikely, a very unlikely scenario, insurance policy. It is not part of the main agreement.
Okay, and that's important, and that's a good way to explain it. Did you sacrifice steel and aluminum, though, to protect autos?
Not at all.
No.
And I have been really, really clear from day one when 232 first started to be discussed that it was on a completely separate track from NAFTA. That's how it has to be, and that's
it may be, but it's part of the negotiations. Because you know it's hanging over your head when you're having these conversations. That's the point. Whether it's on a separate track or not, it's there.
No, it is both legally and as a matter of what are you there actually talking about.
Yeah.
It's on a completely separate track, and in terms of, the hanging over your head aspect of things. One thing that we were very clear on the Canadian side is we were always going to have fact-based arguments. We were always going to look for compromises, creative compromises, as I think we did together with the United States in rules of origin in the car sector. We were always going to be polite, but at the end of the day, we were also going to be firm and resolute, and we were going to stand up for Canada. And I think we did that.
The president clearly had some sort of issue with you. Do you think that his impressions of you in some way colored the talks? The fact that you're tough, you seem pretty hard to knock down, that obviously got under his skin for some reason. Do you think that changed things? Do you think that you got in the way?
Again, Rosie, I would say my negotiating counterpart is Ambassador Lighthizer, and we certainly had many tough moments in the negotiation, as you do in any negotiation of this complexity. But I am very confident that Ambassador Lighthizer throughout was negotiating in good faith, and he was and is a smart and creative counterparty to negotiate with.
But he's tough. I mean, he says he's a tough curmudgeon.
Yeah, I don't think any country would like someone to be leading their crucial trade negotiations who is not tough. For Canada, what we believe in doing is absolutely having backbone. I don't think Canadians would like us to take any other approach, but always being polite, always having arguments based on facts, always looking for a compromise. And the final thing I'll say about this, Rosie, is I'm paid in Canadian dollars. My job is to get the best possible deal for Canadians and to serve Canadians, and that's what matters to me.
Okay, we'll leave it there.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Rosie.
Thank you.